That's a good segue into, what are some of the new drugs on the horizon, and is there anything that's really exciting that, you might want to see in a long-acting formulation?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the one that looks like it's the most imminent is lumateperone from Intracellular Therapy, previously known as ITI-007. And it's, an antipsychotic that does have affinity for the dopamine 2 receptor, so, it has kind of the price of entry to antipsychotic efficacy, but it has other pharmacologic properties ostensibly that are believed or hoped to confer, one, either superior efficacy, or two, a favorable side effect profile. And the phase 2 and the phase 3 data, at least on the side effect profile, look quite promising. The superior efficacy remains to be seen, but given the fact that its side effects seem very good, it seems to work, that would seem to be a candidate for long-acting formulation. And I don't know what the medicinal chemistry challenges are to doing it, but that would be one that would be desirable.
Well, if as you were saying, if there is something else that works for treatment-resistant schizophrenia, that would be it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are there other compounds on the horizon that look interesting?
There are, but you have really a distinction between Me Too drugs that are just variations on D2 receptor pharmacodynamic effects, and innovative non-dopamine targeted treatments like xanomeline, for example. Xanomeline is a muscarinic partial agonist for the 1 and the 4 receptor subtypes. It was studied some years ago by Lilly initially for Alzheimer's and found to be most effective for the psychosis and agitation as opposed to the cognitive impairment. But it had side effect problems, so they tried to use it in schizophrenia, and the first study they did was quite promising, but they lost interest, ostensibly because of side effects, but who knows. At any rate, some years later now it's resurfaced. It's being developed by a company called Karuna. It's being developed with a combined antidote to the side effects. So it's like, remember the old Trilofons? It's a combined with xanomeline plus something called trospium, which would inhibit some of the peripheral side effects. So that looks very interesting. But I think the first hurdle is that it has to show that it's a bona fide antipsychotic. And then if it is, it'll be the first non-dopamine acting compound that has antipsychotic effects. And we'll see about its ability to be formulated in a long-acting way.
Mm-hmm. Any other drugs?
Well, there's a lot of drugs that are out there. There's the glutamate-targeted drugs, pomaglumitad. A company called Taisho in Japan has a TS-134, which is similar pharmacology to pomaglumitad, an mGluR2/3 partial agonist, which inhibits the release of glutamate. Synovion has a drug which is a trace amine receptor, whatever that is, inhibitor. And so, there's phosphodiesterase, take your pick. There's, PDE isoforms come in like 12 varieties. So there's a PDE9 that Boehringer Ingelheim has that's being studied for its putative antipsychotic effects. But, you, as much or more than any of us, have seen these, so-called novel mechanisms come and go. And not one has sort of passed the test. So I wouldn't place any great hopes on the likelihood. So lumateperone is a definite, we're going to have it, and let's see how it does. And if it's good, then that would be a prime candidate for long-acting formulation. The others that are the more novel mechanisms, I think we just have to wait.
What about this antipsychotic that was approved for Parkinson's disease, pimavanserin?
It's not an antipsychotic. It's a 5-HT2A antagonist.
How did they get it approved? Does it work?
No comment.
There's no role for it in schizophrenia.
Not in my opinion.
There are people suggesting there might be, but to be continued. And that's a good segue into, let's talk about non-pharmacologic strategies also. I mean, do we have are there new things that we have to offer patients in terms of treatment? And I guess, I would point to coordinated specialty care as an attempt to integrate different modalities into the treatment of first episode and early phase schizophrenia. I think that's shown some promise. I don't think it's surprising that if we can provide good psychosocial treatment along with good medication, that's going to help patients in the long run, particularly during the early stages of the illness, where we want to also work with the families and make sure that people can get back to school or back to work. So I don't know if I can say that's been a new advance, but I think we're perhaps getting better at doing that and implementing that into clinics.
I mean, it seems like a great idea to have comprehensive plans to, help prevent disability in the first place. Yeah, it's really good. I mean, I wish they weren't restricted to first episode people, but.
Right. I think it's an advance. It's really a model of disease management. I think, but then look at ACT, assertive community treatment. I mean, we've known for years that that's effective, and it's effective in the same population that LAIs have been kind of targeted to, but it hasn't caught on. I mean, and that's an infrastructure problem.
And is that a reimbursement issue, or what?
Yeah,
what do you think?
Yeah, it's a reimbursement. I mean, infrastructure follows financial incentives. If there were revenue streams, if Medicare or Medicaid and whatever, some number of private insurance companies were reimbursing whatever the constituent elements of that are, or the service as a whole, they would be out there. I mean, that would be available, but it's not, because it hasn't been, and that's kind of a financing system and policy problem. But I mean, is there anybody that doubts that that ACT is effective? I mean, that's.
I mean, I think it's been proven again and again to help reduce relapse rates, for sure. Reduce homelessness.
We know that healthcare could be improved in many, many ways, that our system is perhaps too focused on acute treatment and not focused enough on prevention and disease management. And that applies not just in psychiatry, but really much across the board.